came around, you would be maybe 50 yards apart.
As you came in?
As you make a complete circle, go up and around and come down.
Huh.
But you could get on the ground because it's always short of gas. Sometimes you'd land with so little gas you couldn't taxi off the field.
They had to tow you?
Yeah. Always sweating gas. So,
there are three main things that I've been wondering about. The first is, do you ever shoot down any German planes?
I shot down 2. This book will say 1, but that's in error. There's a lot of errors in this thing. They're going back 50 years to put this together.
Okay.
So I shot down 2. But we weren't looking for, and destroyed several on the ground. But we weren't looking for that. Basically, our business was to take care of the bombers. Now, in England, they had a different theory. So when they went out there and the Germans came up, they immediately took off after them and they had dogfights. But that information very vulnerable. And the Germans got very smart about that. They'd get enough people up there to draw you away, and then they'd have a free run at the bomb formation. We didn't shoot down many planes down where we were, in comparison to what they did out there.
So you just run them off.
But we also didn't lose many bombers. We would have whole bomber formations of 1,000, 1,500 planes on missions where we didn't lose a single bomber. The Germans had the advantage of being able to pick the time and place of whether or not they would fight. If they didn't have the advantage, they didn't come in. One of the missions I flew, in fact, I got the Distinguished Flying Cross on it.
How did that come about?
Well, I gave you information there. We had a bomber formation go up into Regensburg, Germany, where there's a Smith factory. And the Germans got very upset when you started picking on their factory, their aircraft factory. And I took the group, I was leading the wing that day, and it's 250 airplanes, and I took them about 100 miles further than we're supposed to. See, what we had to do, we had to send the bombers out ahead of us, because they carried more gasoline, and they'd be up for 12, 14 hours, and we'd be up for 7 or 8, and we'd go catch them. And sometimes it'd get kind of hairy trying to do that, because you run into all kinds of weather conditions, and they'd be 200 miles ahead of you maybe, or 150 miles ahead of you. And as a matter of fact, they had one case, and you can read about it if you have this book here, where he found the wrong bomber formation. And he was the only fighter cover they had, one plane. But anyway, I went up on this thing and took the fighters. They were being attacked by maybe as many as 100 Germans. And we took our fighters in for about next year 7,500 miles. And when we got there, they broke off. We didn't make any contact with them. We didn't shoot down a single German plane, but they didn't lose a bomber after we got there. We escorted them out. And on the way back, I stopped and picked up a couple of straggling bombers, had the engine shot out and stuff, and escorted them out. And there's a little sidelight to that. Back about 10 years ago, I was attending a sales meeting in North Carolina, and there was a man sitting to my left, big fellow, who'd flown an airplane up in Florida. He was a representative of the same company that I was representing. And we were sitting there and we started talking airplanes. He said, P-38 saved my life. It was on 25th of February, 1944. Said we went to Regensburg, Germany, and said I had 2 engines shot out. It was coming out, and I knew I wasn't going to get by those German planes up there. And I said those P-38s turned back, and I said, and they picked you up and escorted you out. And he said, yeah. And I said, I'm the guy that did.
So what did he say?
Small world.
That's amazing.
And
what did he say then?
I said, you owe me, boy. You owe me. So we had a big laugh about it.
Hope he bought you dinner or something, I hope.
But anyway, that's a little interesting side life. There's been a lot of interesting things happening in my life. I've had a good life. I started to tell you a while ago when I got this job as a test pilot out in California. Now, I'm a guy that don't have to shave every day, even at age 75, you know, blonde and so forth. I just got married. My wife and I were going out to play tennis. I had on shorts and just a sweatshirt, not a sweatshirt, a t-shirt. And I got a ticket. I bought a car and got a ticket. And so this guy stopped me. Who are you? And so forth. And I said, he said, let's see your driver's license. I don't have a driver's license. He wrote me up for not having a driver's license too. You'll be in court tomorrow morning down at City Hall. So by the next morning, I cleaned up. I put on my uniform, 3 rows of ribbons, wings, and bars, and I go in this place. This judge looks me over and he said, "They got you for running a traffic light." Yes. Did you? Well, sort of. I said, I slow changed gears and rolled through the side. Yes, I'm guilty. Got you for not having a driver's license. Yeah. Why not? I just got back from overseas. How about the one you had before you went overseas? I said, before I went overseas, I was a baby. He said, are you sure you're a pilot out there? Yeah, I'm sure. He said, what's those ribbons stand for? He made me go through every ribbon I had. You know, I had Distinguished Flying Cross, I had Purple Heart, I had Air Medals, I had stars on some of them, and all this stuff. He said, are you a student? No. He said, you an instructor? I said, no. He said, what do you do? I said, I'm a test pilot. That's when he lost it.
That was the worst thing to tell, right?
Of course, I looked like I was probably 18 years old, because I didn't look my age. I'm aware of that. And he wouldn't believe it. He called a base before he turned loose.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So
there you are.
I'm the only man who was ever a test pilot before he had driver's license.
So he turned you loose and he let you go. Let it off.
So we had a lot of interesting things like that, but they don't come to me offhand. I mean, we're talking about 50 years or longer ago.
So you don't remember a lot about a lot of the dog fights you were in?
Oh, you can remember them, but what's to remember? I mean, you're going round and round in circles. I remember one time we went into southern France from, where were we? We were in Italy at the time, I guess. And we had a fellow named Fillmore who was in California who was leading the thing. And incidentally, I thumbed through the book trying to find his name and couldn't find it. Somewhere he got left out with me. But anyway, we always had radio silence going into the target area. And we could break silence when we got to the target. And it was bad weather. There were big clouds everywhere, and we knew that the Germans knew we were coming because you kind of pick it up on the radio. And so he said, "Follow me, man." That's when he broke radio silence. He said, "Follow me, man. I'll take you to glory, or I'll take you to hell." And about that time, the Germans came out of the clouds. We went round and round, and we shot down 4 or 5 airplanes that day, and as we were coming out of the area, he had everybody check in, and we were all there. He said, it was glory. But during that fight, that day, I got separated, and I was chasing a German around trying to shoot him down. And every time I'd take a shot at him, he'd move just a little bit. And I'd miss him. He'd tuck it a little tighter, and I'd shoot behind him. And we put big letters on the side of our airplane and numbers for identification purposes. And also we color them. Sometimes in red, sometimes yellow, whatever. And My letter that day was Q2. And I kept hearing somebody saying, Q2, keep turning, there's a man on your tail. Q2, keep turning, there's a man on your tail. After he said it about 3 times, I said, hell, that's me. And I looked back, there was 3 of us in that circle. This guy up front was leading me around while the other guy was shooting at. Now you get caught in one of those circles, it's very difficult to get out, because as you roll out of it, then he's got you lined up. So I hollered for help. And this guy, Big John Eastman, the guy I was telling you about, always in trouble, he says, I'm a coming, JoJo. And he came through and shot this guy down off my tail. And then we both chased this other guy up there, but he got away. That's the type of things you see. There was hundreds of them. The trips while I was on the boat coming home, after I decided not to fly those extra 7 missions, I was on the boat coming home, and they sent the guys out on the strafing mission across. They were going to escort other B-38s that was going to dive bomb those oil refineries over there. It was a terrible thing. Everything about it was wrong, and they lost just about the whole squadron. And I would have been leading that, I'm sure, if I had.
Really? And Pulaski was a nasty business.
It was a nasty, nasty business. Germans didn't want you picking on their oil refineries either. And we would bomb that thing just about every week. They'd have it back in operation in a short time. And they'd go do it all over again. And they were well fortified, very well fortified. It was hard. And the main thing was, your airplanes were not like they are today. I mean, the airplane was in its infancy. We had little nothing airplanes when the war broke out. I mean, P-40 was about the best we had. That's one of the Flying Tigers had. They planted the shark's teeth on it and all.
Right.
And gradually, now the P-51 came on later, and that was a fine airplane, and a whole lot like the Messerschmitt. You had a hard time identifying them.
Really?
Yeah, they looked tremendously alike. Had good range. One time I was up over the Alps, and I had an engine catch on fire. And first thing I did was thinking bail out, and then I looked over and I'd be dead before I hit the ground anyway to bail out in this. So got the fire put out and threw it home on one engine. But I got in bomber formation on that. There was a fight going on. I knew I wasn't going to fight anybody on single engine. So I got in bomber formation, which is a tricky business too. We had some cases where the Germans had captured some B-38s. Some had been wrecked and put back together. And they would go up and act like they were friendly, and then suddenly they would turn on the bombers. And the Germans, and then they'd shoot 1 or 2 down, and then they'd be gone. So you had to be very careful going to that bomber formation. I called him, told him I wanted to ride their wing a little bit. He said, come in sideways. So I had to sneak in sideways. Wouldn't dare point the thing, and they must have been 150 caliber guns slung over.
They look real big, didn't they?
I made a false move. They'd have cut that airplane to death. And you wouldn't blame them, really. They had ever. So, but the main thing you always had a problem with gas, running short of gas. You had oxygen problems a lot of times. If you would read this book, you would find a man there named Paul Bensley. He was the other sergeant pilot who transferred the same time I did into transferred fighter. And he went up. He had an oxygen problem on his plane and went up to test top and never came back. We never knew what happened to him. He just gone. We think that he had an oxygen problem when he got passed out and crashed in the ocean. We were probably 30 miles off the coast at the time. There was an Arab showed up about 10 days, 2 weeks later after he disappeared and told that he walked some 30 miles or something to tell us that he saw one of our planes go underwater. And it corresponded to about the time that Paul Benson disappeared. And they were willing to believe him, but he wanted to be paid for what he did. And then they kind of questioned whether or not he was.
Yeah.
So.
At the when you first came to the combat group, the fighter squadron, you weren't an officer at that point, and you still, you were having trouble with the formations and learning how to do it all. Was there any problems getting to know the guys and having them accept you?
No problem. No.
Really?
The only problem ever I had, and I didn't know who was doing it, was somebody in wing headquarters, which is above the group. Wing, there were 5 groups in the wing, and somebody in wing headquarters kept killing off that battlefield commission, for simple little reasons. One time they took a picture of me and I was in shirt sleeves and so forth. And didn't have a uniform. And the button on my shirt was undone and the notation came back. If I was officer material, I knew how to button the buttons on my shirt. Another thing that irritated me some was while I was a flight officer and leading the group any number of times, probably the last 30 missions I flew, probably, I was leading the squadron and sometimes a group and sometimes even the wing. And Red 2 was the safest place that you could be, and I'd be flying Red 1. And here would be some guy come out from wing and say, they'd call me over to one side and say, now, Boyd, this is Major so-and-so, and he's on a very important assignment today. He's going to be flying your wing. You be sure nothing happens to him. You look out for him. As if I didn't have enough things to look out for him.
Exactly.
2 weeks later, you'd see the decorations come through, and you're the guy be getting a Distinguished Flying Cross for systems analysis. Guy wing, when I see a general on television with 8 rows of ribbons, I know how he got them. And every combat man knows the same thing. It's not just me that feels this way. Every combat man knows how he got those decorations. There are exceptions. Some of them are actually in combat. Most of them are not. When I was flying transport, we used to carry mail. Every flight went out had mail on it, plus other things. We'd stop at these various bases and deliver the mail. One day I had a colonel come out. We had passengers all the time catching these planes and going up one reason or another up toward the front. And this colonel came out, and he had a very unusual insignia, which I didn't recognize. And later I really come to know what it was, the Special Services. And when we got up to where we were going, he said, put my name on the form. And I said, sir, we just normally fill out the pilot. And he said, put my name on the form. So the next day he rode back with me. When we got started leaving, he went through the same thing again, put his name on the form. 2 or 3 weeks later, we see where he gets a Distinguished Service Medal. He was a postal officer. He was seeing that the boys at the front got their mail. We made that flight every day. But that's how a lot of those things go. So,
What did you think of the Germans as flyers?
some of them were very, very good. They'd had a lot of experience. They shot the Poles over in Poland, and some of them had fought with the Russians. they'd gone down and fought in the desert down with Rommel. Some of them were very, very good. Some of them had 300, 400 victories. They had a different way of counting them than what we did. They counted engines. They shot down a 20-engine plane at the 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So, but some of them had 400, but they shot up a lot of guys who couldn't do much in all old wore-out planes. But it gave them confidence, and as the war went on, a lot of their good pilots had been killed, and they got less aggressive. And as they started to realize the war was lost, they were quite as aggressive. And they never were anxious to come into the battle unless they had every advantage in the world. Most toward the end of the war, when things winded down. We had and if you run through this book in the appendix in the back, you would see that most of our guys that got killed, they got them all in there, or most all of them. They were mostly lieutenants, flight officers. As the war came closer to being an end, then we started getting guys overseas who had been instructors back in the States and built up a lot of time. And believe me, a man who's got 2,000 hours flying time, don't care where it is, he knows everything there is to know about it. You couldn't tell him anything. Some of these guys were majors, lieutenant colonels. All lieutenants in 43 were they got to be some captains, majors, and occasional lieutenant colonels, couldn't tell them anything. And they had high losses. We had one guy come in and made very disparaging remarks in our squadron. He was a been instructor, and he had almost 3,000 hours. They put him in my flight. And I said, now, one thing you got to do is stay in formation. There's safety in numbers. We can protect the squadron. We can't protect individuals all that easy. And so we went on a mission, and the Germans had a habit. They'd send a decoy down. They'd get up in the sun and wait. They'd send a decoy down, kind of like a fluttering bird out in front of you. And you took off after him, then they'd pounce on you. They sent one down, and he got on the phone, on the radio. There's one, let's go get him. I said, stay in formation. He said, I'm going after him. He took off after him, and before we get to help him, they'd killed him. He didn't last 30 seconds after he broke formation. Couldn't tell him a thing. Well,
Paid with his life, didn't he?
yeah, couldn't tell him. But toward the back of this thing, you would see, well, I won't show here, but if you was reading in this area in here, you would find that there was a lot of guys who came over late. And this is about the way you looked when you went out on mission.
Mm-hmm. And that's with the oxygen mask affixed,
Yeah.
flight helmet on,
Yeah. There's
life
a main
vest.
vest.
Mm-hmm.
The ding is set between your parachute and your seat, between the parachute and where you were sitting down on. You actually sat on the dinghy. You'd sit on the parachute.
Mm-hmm.
It fit inside of it. But that's about what one looked like. And there's a story I've told it many times to people. I'm just talking. The hard part, those airplanes were very, very cold. Very cold. The guns were in the nose, and you had to have a hole about yay big around that machine gun because of the vibration you would get. So wind whisked right through that. Going across the Alps in the wintertime, I don't know how cold it got, but we had a thermometer and thing. It went to 60 below, and you would hit that 60 below before you ever got across the Alps. Now, you'd get up about 4 o'clock in the morning and start these missions, get off the ground about daylight. You go over and get you some breakfast, and most of the breakfast consists of almost nothing but some good hot coffee. You drink about 2 mugs of that. And then you put on all these clothes. You had long john underwear, and wool pants, and fleece lined pants. You look like a mummy. And and you go, you fly about 3 hours, and that's when the coffee would hit you. Now, I'm here to tell you that 60 below zero will make a little boy out of a full-grown man. And you start digging through all those clothes, and then you had a little tube down here, long to come out from under the seat. If you could get it, you had to get you here, because that's all you could find.
Right, there's barely anything.
And then you try to throw it into that little
tube.
bundle. Of course, it would freeze, throw it back at you.
It would freeze on the spot.
Yeah. And then those were sure smelly airplanes.
I bet.
We had another funny incident. Well, it happened on the mission. When we went down to Pole Valley, I was speaking of. We hit those guys at daylight, just as they were getting out of bed. Plumbing conditions in the war zones are very primitive. What they would do would be dig a trench. That would be where you would do your business, and put a block or something over on one side and then board across it. And when they throw the dirt back over to one side, just take a shovel in, and then when you go in there to use this thing, then you take a shovel and cover up your mess. We started down this Pole Valley. We had 4 airplanes in my flight. We spread them out, and we spread out all 16 airplanes in the squadron, and then the other squadrons were doing the same thing. So we swept the whole valley. We topped a little hill, and here was a guy out there doing his early morning business, sitting on one of these places. 4 P-38s leveled out on him. He saw us about the same time we saw him. He jumped up and started running with his bare bottom on, shining in the breeze. And every time somebody shoot at him, his pants would trip him, and he would fall and shoot right over his head. We never did kill that guy.
You got away.
Yeah. I think I told you about all I know to tell you.
Okay.
I don't know anything else. I mean, if you had 2 or 3 guys around talking at the same time, remember when, go for it.
Yeah.
And that's one guy would bring up something, and another guy would bring up something else. And these things would all come back to you.
All right.
I don't know anything else that comes to my mind right at the present time.
Okay.